Number 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment today? Seeing none. Number 4, approve the minutes of the July 22 Extension Education Economics Development Committee. I will take a motion. Motion by Supervisor Rosenberg. Second by Supervisor Unger. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determinations. 5A, discussion to recommend to extension or executive committee for update to the strategic objective and expended outcomes forward to the 2019-2022 strategic plan. Okay, the updates were in your packet on, I believe it was 10.8 and 10.10. 10.6, I'll go back to 10.6. Do we have, I didn't see, for updates for that, do we want to do any updating on 10.6 at all? Supervisor Baker?
We were going to have a presentation from WCA on that. I don't know what the status of that is.
I know that Administrator Leonard was reaching out on that. I don't know that he's heard back at this time. So I'm not sure what the answer to that question is.
Okay, well, we'll just wait till Lance gets back. We'll skip 10.6 for now, and we'll go to 10.8. Proposed updates for the EED strategic plan objective 10.8 and 10.10. I see some updates on here. Everybody get a chance to take a look at these? Yes, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just these proposed updates were actually forwarded by Supervisor Baker as proposed updates to 10.8 and 10.10. So they were included in your packet so that further discussion could be had if the committee wanted to do that.
Do we have further discussion on these, on 10.8? Supervisor Baker.
Or if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to explain my rationale for them.
Okay. Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I reviewed these, and thank you, Supervisor Baker, for bringing up these ideas. Only question I have is on strategy C, support efforts to develop a Kowalski Road I-39 interchange. That's a state highway. I don't know. I don't know what kind of policies we could enforce or encourage to the state to put that interchange in there. I'm just asking. I'm not sure, but like I said, and I understand why you want to do it. They've been trying to develop a interchange there for many years. So, but that's, I guess, my question.
Supervisor Baker.
So that is, it's been a priority of Kronenwetter. It's in my district, and during our campaign or candidate forum, most, if not all, of the Kronenwetter trustees had indicated their support for that, and I also added an outcome measure, which is how we're asking for the influence. So we're asking for the county board to basically support in outcome measure 3 by December 31st, 2023, to amend the Wausau MPO long-range transportation plan to include the Kowalski Road interchange. So that's what we would like the board to lend support to. We don't expect that the board will have a direct impact on getting it passed, just that we want to get it into the long-range plan.
Are we, I mean, can we put this in as a strategy or an objective? Seeing that it is a state highway?
So just from a legal perspective, just looking at the wording, the wording is to support efforts to develop an interchange. So it's not obligating or suggesting that the county would construct an interchange, but there are some things that the county board could do to support efforts. So I think that the board could do that.
So the word support is the key to it. Okay. Mr. Rosenberg.
Yeah. Now, is it on? Yeah. I'm, and it's from memory, but I remember from 20 years ago when they were putting in the interchange at Cedar Creek, the DOT had originally wanted to put that in at Pine Street, I think, and then move the cemetery. They had a whole bunch of things that they didn't want to do, but they didn't want to put it in. They wanted to put it in between the two of them, and they opted at that time to put it in near the Cedar Creek Mall because they wanted it. I'm not sure that they can put that many interchanges on an interstate highway going forward. There's a bunch of background that has to happen here. The other thing that sort of that I question is going into Cronenwetter there, when you to the east, I know is all floodplain, so it's developable, but it has some issues to get it done, and I'm wondering if this is a wise use of our efforts.
So the village has worked on this for a long time, and it's my understanding from Roger Lusch that the decision not to put this in was more political. Back in about 20 years ago, someone donated to the wrong governor. Didn't get elected. I can't attest whether that's true or not. There is a complete or an extensive in your packet that just got added today. There's an extensive plan in our WRPC or the regional planning that addresses the issues, and I believe is fairly favorable towards the plan. It does address the floodplain issues, and Cronenwetter is working on that in terms of getting their maps drawn accurately. So there is no doubt that us voting for this will not be the final step, but only one incremental step in potentially getting this passed. So, there's still be a lot of work down the road that the county won't necessarily be involved in, but this is just basically a request of the county board. If you read the objective, encourage development and redevelopment of key employment centers in areas that possess strong market potential, provide good transportation access for workers, and promote the efficient movement of goods. And this proposal, these strategy and outcomes definitely fall within that objective. And it's a little different than the other strategies and objectives we've had in the plan, in that it's not a very general objective and strategies. It's very narrowly tailored and something that you can see tangible results from. Some of the other ones, they're just so broad that there's not necessarily a way to make an impact on them, or so it is a little different. So I'm proposing for a discussion, so that's fine. If we decide not to support it, I'll honor that. That'll be fine. But I think it fits within Objective 10.8, and I think it would be good for the county. I think Cronenwetter is the fastest growing municipality in our county, And we, this is something Corona River wants to happen. So, that's my request that we consider it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? On the last one, Dave, by December 31st to 2023 to amend the WASA MPO long-range transportation plan to include Klowski Road interchange. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
So that request came from members of, people that live in Corona River that have been actively involved in this for 10 to 20 years. I'm not 100% familiar. This whole topic is not something that I personally have been involved with. So I'm doing this on behalf of my constituents. And I've been told that it was, so Randy Pfeiffer, who was formerly employed by Corona River, was on the MPO and is now employed by Wausau, had told Corona River that was going to be included in the long-range plan, and then at the last minute, for whatever reasons, it was not. So they think that there's close to enough votes in that organization to pass, and that our support may make the difference in getting that passed.
Thank you. With the last, with the December 2023 amendment, myself, I don't feel comfortable having it in there. That's just my opinion. I would like some more input from the committee, if we could, what they think. Don't all talk at one time. Tom, go ahead.
I'd be voting against it, because I think there's a bunch of hurdles in there that should be found out ahead of us supporting that. If we talked about it as a state highway, it's an interstate, yeah, and there's rules and regulations. If there's things in there that just block it anyway, why are we doing that? There should be. I think just from a casual conversation, you can find those kind of things out from them. And I would, without knowing more, I'd stay away from it.
Dave?
If our committee would it be helpful, I could ask for someone to come in and give us educational at our next meeting? Just give us some more update on it.
That would be very helpful, yeah. Okay. Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who's on the MPO. I believe it's Supervisor Robinson. I'm not sure who else is on the MPO for the county. I'm not sure. I have never gone to any of the meetings, but I believe he's on there. But I think that's a good idea to get an update from the MPO as to what the situation would be as far as getting the MPO to make a change like this. I'm not against it. I agree with there might be some hurdles or things that they know it's not going to happen. At least, you could still ask for it. But like I said, I think to have a update from the MPO would be good.
Thank you. Well then, for the next meeting, Dave, or we can get somebody to give us a little more information on this would be really helpful for the committee.
Okay, I will work on that and get a speaker.
Thank you. On the rest of the outcome, starting from strategy A down to, except for what we just got done discussing, is everybody kind of in agreement with this as far as we go until we learn more on our next meeting about the outcome measure 3? Okay, we will move on to 10.10. I see some changes in here. Anybody have any questions on the changes in here? No? Yeah, Supervisor Baker?
So on outcome measure 2, I would like to give Lance or another member of staff the opportunity to provide feedback on that.
Okay, thank you. Lance?
Read it for you. So one of our strategies is to enhance awareness. Strategy C is to enhance awareness of McDevco as a primary point of contact for business expansion and startup information. And I thought that a good way to do that would be in outcome measure 2, by December 31st, 2023, add one or more McDevco informational pages to the work section of the Marathon County website.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We are in the midst of doing a website update. I just provided that informational update to infrastructure earlier today. I'm sorry, a lot of meetings today. And I think there's an opportunity for us to look at that. Right now, McDevco, of course, has it's a standalone website, but a link to those services. We certainly can look at that and evaluate when we can get that done. What was your date by the end of this coming year?
By the end of next year. And, it could be as simple. I would think that in that update, we would want to have a link to the McDevco's website, but we might have more visitors from, that would first come to our website that we could direct then to McDevco.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had it by December of this year. I don't think we'll have our website up by December of this year, but certainly by December of 2023, the new website will be completed. So we can certainly evaluate that, and I hesitate, I should say, to promise to do something, but that sounds pretty reasonable. I don't see any barrier to doing that. So I think that I don't have any issue with that as an outcome measure.
Thank you. And McDevco yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So when that update does come up, that is going to be added to the outcome measure number 2. And the way that sounds like, this probably won't happen till next year. Is that going to be a problem with settling this, Lance, or no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think as soon as we have the website up, to Supervisor Baker's point, if we can get it's not hard to add a page that has a link to the McDevco page. Just redirect users that are interested in, that come to the county's website for economic development related purposes to be redirected to that site shouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay, thank you. So the rest of the strategies and outcomes in 10.10, does anybody else have any questions about it, or are we satisfied of what we got? Supervisor McEwen.
Thank you. The only thing the outcome measures are 2022. If you want to keep the wording the same, but then make it 2023 or 2024 or whatever, we'd like to extend it for 2 years, so 2024. But those, just would have to be number changes as far as the dates.
Supervisor Baker?
Well, I was actually proposing that we replaced the existing outcomes with the new outcomes, so the dates were changed in there. So the changes were, in the first one we have that the number of businesses in Marathon County will increase, and I changed that to during 2023 and 2024, the average annual number of business startups will be maintained or increased. So as opposed to focusing on all of the businesses and maybe businesses that don't stay in business, that I think McDevco's focuses more on startup of new businesses. So that I just changed that a little bit to reflect that. And then I never really understood what businesses will be sustained for 3 years. I didn't really understand what that meant. Does that mean they're in business for 3 years, or does that mean that we give them support for 3 years? So I just changed that outcome measure to adding to that page to the website. So it is significantly changed. I mean, if someone disagrees with that, that would be a good topic for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dave on that? Okay, it looks like we might be making some progress on this, hopefully. So, so 10.6, we will wait to see. I don't know, Lance. On 10.6, Dave made a point. We were going to have somebody from, where was that, Dave?
Wisconsin, WCA. We were going to have a speaker from WCA comment on 10.6.
It was Dale Knapp, that conversation about workforce and everything. And so I know that Chair Gibbs and we had initially reached out to them to kind of talk about it internally, but hadn't yet asked them to come up and speak to the county board. But I know I haven't anyway, but I know that's part of the plan, is to get the whole board to hear that, because it really plays into a lot of issues that the board is facing just in general, whether that's class comp study or anything else. It's going to kind of help provide a systemic look at a bunch of different issues.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is I think also there was discussion, and I apologize if it wasn't this committee. As I said, there's been a lot of meetings recently, but it's not only Dale Knapp, but the local region Chamber of Commerce has had a lot of similar discussions within the community about the workforce shortage. So my recollection was not only the Dale Knapp piece, but also our local region and Chamber of Commerce. And I know Chair Gibbs is aware of that. I just don't know that the date for the full board meeting presentation has been finalized. I did reach out to the local region Chamber of Commerce to make sure that they're aware that that will be an ask. And they were more than happy. Dave Ekman was more than happy to come talk about it.
Is that going to be a full board or just to this committee?
I think the intent, our inclination was the full board for the reasons that Deputy Administrator Holman referenced. There's a lot of areas that workforce shortage impacts. Just one other example, the internal operations of our HR, Finance, and Property Committee. They're dealing with the class comp study that Chris mentioned. Understanding kind of the overall environment of workforce shortage and how that impacts class compensation for all organizations, but certainly our own, we thought was beneficial. So having that in front of the full board was the initial thought.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Supervisor Book?
I agree with Supervisor.
Use the mic.
Oh, thanks. I agree with Supervisor Baker's proposed change to outcome measure 2. I am curious though what that original outcome meant, or what was supposed to be accomplished with the original outcome. Just my curiosity. There must have been some good intention, but I'm not understanding what that might have been.
If I can ask a clarifying question, you're referring to objective 10.10 outcome measure number 2?
Right.
Okay, so my recollection of that, and that predated Kim in her role at McDevco, was McDevco not only does a lot with entrepreneurial startup businesses, but they also do a fair amount of revolving loans for businesses that already exist. And sometimes those revolving loans are the things that keep businesses from going out of business. So the idea was have an outcome measure that tracked whether or not the allocation of funds from McDevco to an existing business allowed that business to be sustained. So there's one example. McDevco did a lot of work with Dales Weston Lanes a number of years ago when that business was facing some challenges. It's been a real success story through McDevco. So not only do they work with kind of the entrepreneurial side, but also what does that existing business need to stay in business or not leave the county to get its needs met? Because we do have a number of businesses that are growing and they might otherwise look outside the county to grow. How can McDevco keep those businesses here? So that idea, that language of sustained was McDevco's allocating resources in terms of dollars through revolving loans. Do they stay and are they continuing to be successful? Because certainly you could lend money in such a fashion that it wasn't successful. The business nevertheless went out of business. So that is my recollection of the discussion that was had in the generation of that outcome measure.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And not to get off track, but I know 8.7, this committee shares the lead with infrastructure. And if you're interested on the changes that we voted on, it's in our August 4th packet of infrastructure, all provided if you want to look at it. Like I said, we knew that we shared this lead with Triple EDC. So if you have any other, if you don't agree with the changes that infrastructure came up or have some more ideas, you're more than welcome, to do that. But we did vote on 8.7, the changes from infrastructure on our behalf, and a lot of it was technology. So thank you.
Supervisor Baker.
We voted last month to support that. Yeah.
I knew that.
Supervisor Baker.
Back to 10.10 and outcome measure 2. One of the reasons I took the prior one out was in the 2022 update that Lance prepared for us. It didn't actually seem like that data was available and wasn't really in there. So I thought if it's an outcome measure that we can't really provide feedback on, then maybe it should be something else. So. It was addressed, Lance. I'm not suggesting that you didn't address it. Just that I didn't think it was like, what percent were for 3 years.
Yep.
Kind of.
No, I think your point is well taken. I'm just having Kim see if they actually track that.
Yeah, I was pulling up this outcome measure. Do you mind? Thank you. 10, and then which one? All right. All right. So for 3 years. So this is from the strategic plan update we submitted a few months ago, and this is the information that I have. So hopefully this somewhat answers your question. During the pandemic, we were the administrator of Wausau Cares, forgivable loans, small business grants, Marathon County small business grants, and Marathon County micro business grants. The total funds dispersed to businesses as of that date in June, $539,000. 77 businesses were funded. 75 of those businesses funded are still in business. And in order to receive that grant, they had to be in operation prior to March 25th, 2020. So these numbers are from June 2022. So 75 of those 77 businesses are still operating that were operating prior to March 25th, 2020 and received funds. We do track a lot of things internally. But I think what we would want to do is maybe change how we maybe track a couple of things relating to that outcome measure then to. We also have information for the EEC, who transitions out, who still maintains in business and things like that. So we can look to track that.
I guess maybe a thought from the staff perspective, if there's something, an outcome measure you're interested in, let us know kind of the general idea, and we'll see if we already track something like that. And because what we don't want to do, I think Supervisor Baker is spot on. It's a lot of work to start tracking a new data measure that you don't already track. And we track a lot of things across all of our departments. So if there's a data measure that fits the bill enough for you, my preference would be to utilize that as opposed to creating a whole nother tracking system to get at that. So if there is something else, and certainly Supervisor Baker's suggestion with outcome measure number 2, that is a very discrete thing that I'm confident we can accomplish. But if there's some other piece that would define success for you, because that's really what your outcome measures are, is they are the definitions of success, that we're moving the needle in the right direction. Let us know what those general thoughts are, and staff can give some thought to it and propose a couple of outcome measures for you. I don't know if that makes sense, Supervisor Baker.
Sure. I would not, if the committee so decides, I would not object to keeping outcome measure 2 and then making my proposed one outcome measure 3. That'd be fine with me. You know, then we would need to change the date on the outcome measure 2.
If there's so your first outcome measure does get at, again, those kind of business startups, right? The number of businesses will increase. It's either business, to have that happen, you either have a new business created or a business come to the area. If those two things are important, outcome measure number 1 would remain. And if you are interested in tracking and understanding whether or not McDevco's allocation of funds keeps businesses, sustains businesses, that is, you know, we're lending money prudently, McDevco is lending money prudently, we could leave it in and we can do that. So if your suggestion is to kind of amend the proposal from Supervisor Baker to add that, I'm happy to, I can type while you guys are doing that.
Yes, Supervisor Baker?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we amend the proposed changes for 10.10. I don't know if I can make a motion that we amend and accept at the same time. So that outcome measure 2 as proposed would be outcome measure 3. The prior outcome measure 2 would be retained, but it would be by December 31st, 2024 instead of 2022. So
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Discussion?
So just to clarify, your motion is actually to approve the proposed updates to the strategic plan with the amendment that you just stated.
that is correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carried. Okay, moving on. Do we have any more on 10.10? So we're making some progress here. We're getting there. We'll get there. Okay, then we're going to keep moving on. Unless Lance has questions they're discussing over there.
Just making sure we're going to be able to operationalize, which is good. We will.
Okay, thank you. Number 6 up. Operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy, none. Excuse my voice here. Number 7, educational presentation and committee discussion. A, monthly summary from the Marathon County Library. We do not, Leah is not here today. Is she online? No. Okay, well, it's in your packet. Does anybody have any questions on it? If not, we will go to 7B, UW Extension. Jason.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Triple EDC committee. The written report is in your packet. A couple of things that I want to draw your attention to a little bit is, first of all, in FoodWise, you see we only have one educator listed. That is because we just hired our new FoodWise administrator. So I'm happy to report that Mallory McGivern has accepted an offer to join our team. Mallory, some of you may know that name because she currently works for the Neighbor's Place. And so we're happy to have her joining our team, and she will start at the end of September. We were gracious that she accepted the offer, and we worked with her on a start time to make sure that she could work with the Neighbor's Place to find a good kind of conclusion spot with her employment there. So really excited to have her on staff, and so that was just announced a couple of days ago, and I let the team know. So we're super excited to have her on staff. In the horticulture area, you have the Gaining Grounds Garden. For those that are not familiar with that, that's actually the corner of Thomas and Grand. It's been a work in progress for the past couple of years. The city of Wausau owns that property. It is an agreement with the county here, no cost. Basically, just we can utilize the space. And so Janelle, our hort educator, has been working on that space with the folks from Addict Services, from Huber Release, really working on skill development and therapeutic horticulture modalities in those spaces. And we just got word that the city of Wausau will be looking at developing that site down the road in a couple of years. But we've been asked, Janelle's been asked to vacate that space. So we're working on kind of a new plan to maintain the core of what that garden has offered to our clientele in finding an adapted physical space to have that happen. So that's not in the report, but it's something that we are working on. And then the last thing I want to draw your attention to is the robust 4-H program that the report that's in there. I mean, it's been a busy summer. I can't thank the staff enough for jumping 2 feet in and really getting the program reinvigorated. I think we see that, people are clamoring for kind of that in-person camp experiences again, stuff with the Wisconsin Valley Fair, and it's all listed in there. And I'm happy to report, thanks to support from administration, we're working with AmeriCorps to hire a part-time AmeriCorps member that's going to be with a specific goal of expanding 4-H in the schools across the county. So working with school districts, intercurricular instead of strictly extracurricular, is expanding then our program outreach with the schools. So a couple exciting pieces there. The last thing that's not in the report that I want to make the committee aware of, I've actually informed Administrator Leonard and Chair Kurt Gibbs. Actually effective today, I have started a new position with an extension. I've assumed the role of Assistant Dean serving the northern half of the state. And so what that means is I'll be this position that I'm in now, I'll be their supervisor. So I'll be working with within the organization to refill my position. But until that point, I'll be doing 2 different jobs. So I'm happy to say that I don't anticipate any sort of change in the next 2 to 3 months until I get the position posted and recruited and hired, which will allow me to work with the administration and you all over the next couple of months to see our budget process through and get through the end of 2022 on a high note and welcome a new area director to the team. So thank you for all your support. I've been in this role for 5 years now, and I'm fortunate and blessed to be able to serve Extension in a different capacity. I'll still be working with Area 7, which is Marathon County, basically, let's just say Highway 29 North, and a little bit actually south of that in Trempealeau and Jackson counties, and kind of weird how the line goes, but the northern half of the state. So So I'll still be around. It's not goodbye. It's more of like, hey, we'll see you later. I'm still going to be around. I told this to Administrator Leonard, I may not be physically present in the office as I've been for the last 5 years because I have other things that are just kind of inundating my schedule, but I'm still here serving Marathon County, and reach out if you have any questions or needs. So thank you.
Any questions for Jason? I do have one, Jason. I won't delete your phone number, but
Please don't. Yes.
it was brought up at one of our fair board meetings that was, at the Wisconsin Valley Fair, we have the FFA, Marathon County Holstein, and the 4-H. There was some talk about opening the showing part of it to the Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Is there any progress on that, or is there any going anywhere?
Yeah, so a couple things, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you after this or at a different time. But yeah, so actually there are proposed changes in the state of Wisconsin through the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection under Section 160 of the code that would remove specific notations of 4-H and FFA to be broader swaths being youth-serving organizations with an educational framework or educational plan. So that would include your Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Holstein breeders, that your swine, local youth swine programs and that sort of thing. So there's kind of some kind of trepidation of how this is going to play out, but it would open, by policy, it would open fairs up to a larger audience that currently don't showcase at the fair or at the Wisconsin Valley Fair. And that has not been officially approved. It's still going through committee. But I originally was supposed to pass by October, be implemented, by October for the next fair year. I don't think it's passed yet, so I don't know if it's going to be implemented. It's a great opportunity for 4-H, FFA to work with the respective fair boards across the state to make sure that we're including more young people. And that's why I'll go back to my having the AmeriCorps position intercurricular in the schools as a way to get other young people that may not be able to come to a 4-H meeting in the evening hours because of a variety of barriers, the opportunity to have that program exposure subsequently might show at the Wisconsin Valley Fair. So it's opening more doors is what I hope. So I'm happy to talk with you more about that after.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jason? Okay, moving on to 7C, McDepco August update. Kim?
Yes, this is on. So yes, as it relates to my update, just some updated numbers for you. So with gap financing, we obviously administer the Marathon County Revolving Loan Fund, which covers a variety of things from business startups, expansions, new real estate, construction, agriculture, et cetera. In the last 3 months, we've been able to disperse $147,000 of that. So that's very exciting, and that's our year-to-date number for you. Obviously, as I transitioned into role, that was one of my number one priorities, so we do feel like we're starting to gain some headway there. So if you think about it, we can only lend up to 20% of total project uses, so $147,000 does represent a large amount of business growth in our county that we've been able to help with, so that's exciting. For COVID grants, we still are administrating those. We just funded $25,000 more. So your updated number for the total funds dispersed to Marathon County businesses is actually $165,000 out of that Marathon County Microbusiness Grant Fund. In a couple of weeks, we start our 16-week Gears Certificate of Excellence program. For those of you that don't know, it's a 10,000-foot overview to what it takes to run a business. From each week is every aspect from insurance to commercial real estate to finance, accounting, and at the end product is they hopefully have a business plan and they're ready to take the next step, either to get an office with us at the incubator. And I say office, we do have manufacturing, but those are full. office with us at the incubator or ultimately come to us for some gap financing needs to start their business. We also will be celebrating Women Entrepreneurial Month in October with some really great workshops. So watch your email for that and our website. And then as far as municipalities, we're continuing to host quarterly in-person meetings or as needed at the Entrepreneurial Center, which is where McDevco's office is located. And we do manage the tenants and occupancy at the EEC. So a lot of you have probably heard me talk about this. In January of 2021, McDevco moved into the Entrepreneurial Center, and we assumed the management of the tenants. As of January, and when I started, I believe we were measuring about 61%. We're going to finish August around 85%. Manufacturing is full. We still have a few offices, so very exciting to see the progress and growth there. If you have not been to the Entrepreneurial Center to see how cool it is and the wide variety of businesses that we have, we get very creative to help these startups fit into the offices as best we can. So come out and check it out, and we can talk a little bit more about our gap financing efforts to get the Marathon County Revolving Loan Fund dollars out into the community, into the hands of the businesses that need it. So any questions? One thing I did want to point out, so when we were talking about how we track businesses that stay in business, it's truly with the businesses that come through our doors, be it through consulting or our services to help them point them in the right direction with their business, those that go through programs, those that reach out to us for revolving loan fund dollars, or those that receive grants. That's our core, that we're really gathering that data to measure who's staying in business and maintaining for the 3 years. It's those folks that we're having those one-on-ones with and mentoring through our programs and our services. But any questions?
Any questions from the committee? None? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good update. Moving on to 7D, UW Stevens Point. Mrs. Toms,
Hello.
your first name, I'm gonna kill it, so.
Ozella.
Ozella, I'll have to remember that. Thank you.
No problem. Good afternoon, everybody. So I do have a report submitted. Just want to hit a few highlights. We are looking for volunteers. If anyone is interested in working in our Union Cafe, I have the times listed here. We really want to provide this service to students, selling, coffee, fruit, muffins, but at cost. And so in order for us to do that, we need to have people to volunteer. So if anybody's interested in volunteering, know anyone who's retired or someone who just like to do service to, in the community, this would be a great opportunity, maybe like 1 day a week. That would be great. So please contact me. Our faculty is back under contract this past Monday, so it was exciting to see faculty and staff who hadn't been there all summer, well, mainly faculty who hadn't been there all summer. So I was really excited to meet individuals I hadn't met yet because I started in July. So very exciting. And on Tuesday, September the 6th, students will be back on campus. So very exciting time. On September 8th, we will have our welcome back event for our students, faculty, and staff. So that will be in Marathon Park, 11:30 to about 1:30. And the last thing I'll mention is we are participating in a day of service on September 22nd. Our Chancellor Gibson, will have his inauguration on September 23rd at the main campus, and he wanted all 3 campuses to provide service to their community the day before his inauguration. So the options we have for Wausau is with United Way, the Boys and Girls Club, Mont Gardens, and the Neighbors Place. So faculty, students, staff will be volunteering at those various locations. And I have a couple events that are coming up that are listed here as well. Any questions?
Any questions? Kim?
Hello. Enrollment, how is that this year?
We will have the final numbers September 16th.
Okay.
So I
So
can
maybe
give you
next
that
time.
update
Yeah, that would be
then.
great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 7F or 7E, update from an administrator on NACO conference discussion related to accessible housing. Lance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So really, this is, I think, probably better understood in connection with the work you just did on your strategic plan, and whether or not you would like to consider including those things within your strategic plan, and you can perhaps work with the vice chair of the board to do that. But it was one of the main topics at the National Association of Counties, and I intend to send out to you, and I'll answer any questions you might have, but I'll send out to you a link to the National Association of Counties website that talks about an issue that really is widespread across the entire country, and that is access to housing at all levels. And certainly I'm sure Supervisor Unger can speak to this far more eloquently than I can. But I just talked with Dr. Toms today about, she's new to this community and it's a challenge to try to locate housing in this area. So we are not unique in that challenge, and I'll send you the link that I referenced from the National Association of Counties. But there were a number of discussions about housing at the National Association of Counties conference. And really the challenge is to identify what is the county role. So really this is just going to be, I don't expect any action today. I'm going to send you more information, but it really aligns with what Deputy Administrator Holman brought up before, and Supervisor Baker did as well, this idea of workforce shortage. It's really a component of a number of things. One of them was talked about at the Health and Human Services meeting earlier this week. Access to child care has led to some of our workforce withdrawing from the workforce or not re-entering the workforce. You have people retiring that might otherwise choose to stay in the workforce because, their children have child care needs of their own, and there's an opportunity for that family to address that issue. Or you have individuals that have young children that are making a determination as a family to not re-enter the workforce. That's one reason. You have, just quite simply, fewer people replacing people as they retire. You have fewer new workers coming in, and there's a simple explanation for that. We have fewer children now than we, as a community, than we had historically, and we're not unique in that either. And then the last piece is really this idea of housing. When people look to move to a community, one of the first things they do is try to locate housing. We had an employee who actually just started with us last week or the week before. One of the first questions, I think it was the first question that he asked our HR department when we offered him the position, and he relocated from the state of Pennsylvania, was, what's it going to be like for me to try to find housing? What's that look like? He's a single young man, which is, again, I think as Supervisor Niemeyer brought this up earlier, that's a population that, based on the cost of housing, depending on what job you have, you're often trying to look for a roommate because we don't have a lot of, one-bedroom apartments that are for rent at a price point that many people, as they're entering the workforce, can afford. So all those things come together, and they're impacting that workforce shortage. One important piece, like I said, is housing. So it's just going to start the conversation. The county board really needs to identify what is the role that it sees for itself in the broader conversation around workforce shortage, but then more specifically, what does it look like with respect to housing? There are a number of counties, and I'll send you links as well for the Wisconsin Counties Association. A number of counties are utilizing some of their ARPA funds to address housing. My understanding is Sheboygan is doing that. Certainly Washington County, I've had a number of conversations with their county executive in Washington County, and they're going to try to address housing access through a number of county-led initiatives. That's a new approach. Again, I liken things to broadband. I'm a big analogy fan. When you look back at broadband in 2009, the county board looked at broadband and said, you know what? We don't see a role for local government at that time in broadband. They viewed that as a private sector issue of concern. Fast forward to 2019, the board took a fundamentally different approach, and I think we've Certainly that then led staff to do some things in terms of modify annual work plans, but you've seen a different approach. Similar conversations have happened recently around childcare, and they're happening around housing. But we need to understand, staff need to understand what the board's expectation is relative to that area. If the board determines there is a county role, we'll certainly help with you to, or help you try to articulate what that is and make sure that we understand it so we can deliver on your expectations. However, if it's not, we want to know that too. It's really just, this is starting the conversation. Happy to send, like I said, I'll send those things along. But it's a complex issue, and we're not unique. At the same time, I have really good news. We, on the NACO website, we are growing. We have, we're one of the counties in the state of Wisconsin, you'll see on their map, we're green. Green is growing, and our housing values, while they're increasing substantially, and again, Supervisor Unger can speak to this more than I can, because this data from NACO is a couple years old. Housing values are increasing substantially. We're still not in what I'll call a crisis point where you look at communities outside of San Diego, they look at a ratio of median income to median home price, and anything 1 to 4, according to NACO, the data they had, that was deemed healthy. There are places around communities in San Diego where it's 1 to 26. I mean, can you imagine having your entire, 1 being your entire median income to the median home price, not having to afford anything else, food, gas, all the pleasures of life, children, childcare. They just keep coming to mind. 1 to 26 is pretty amazing. When I went to the NACO conference, I pulled up Marathon County. We were in that right around 1 to 4. But that, again, is 2 years old. And certainly, Supervisor Unger, if you have anything to add, please do. But just really wanting to start the conversation. And if there are specific things you want from staff in terms of data, I'll try to find those and get those to you. But I will be sending you the links from Wisconsin Counties Association and the National Association of Counties.
Yes, Lance, that would be helpful for us to look at that. Any questions? Kim?
So in our community, I've noticed that there's quite a few contractors, quite a few builders that are putting up apartments. So excited about that. The only thing is the cost. I mean, I checked into the cost of a 2-bedroom or a nice apartment, underground parking, $1,600 to $1,800 a month. So now we have lots of new apartments going up. And I keep looking at you because I know that you brought that up. So, but yeah, for a single person to afford that, that's really challenging. And I know that the stats came out for August. There's like 9 million people that are losing their rentals. I mean, they're being evicted because of the cost of rentals going up so high. And I know it trickles down from, like bigger cities to our rural communities, but it is going to be an issue. And the other thing I've noticed with the housing market, just for purchasing homes, is we've increased the APR has gone up. So your rate has gone up for your financing. So that's brought down people's incomes that can afford, maybe if they could afford a $200,000 house, now it's $160,000. So with putting in offers on properties, I mean, I started out like maybe in the beginning in like May and June, I would have a competition of like anywhere from 10 to 15 offers in. Now I'm having maybe like 2 to 5 offers. So I see that, I mean, I don't know exactly what that means, but the competition is not as fierce out there, and I think that's because of the interest rate and things are more expensive and that. So just a little bit to reiterate, I don't know what our role is in the housing, but that would be interesting. I don't know for the county board because there's going to be the direction of our economy too would be a huge role in that. But bringing in young families, housing, of course, is the issue, but yeah, what is our role in it? I guess that would be the big question to look at, and if we have a role in it. I don't know. Like you said, like from broadband to now housing to the future. So just a comment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? You know, you talk about the $16,000 to $2,000 for a, you know, 2-bedroom apartment. You know, that's very, very high as far as I'm concerned. And part of that would be to pay that kind of money to bring people into our county to work. You know, like you say, can't find a house, but they do find one, and then they can't afford it. And it's actually turning them away. I assume, you know, I would hope that, you know, with the information that Lance is going to give us, that we can get a better look at this. And far as pricing, there's probably nothing we can do about it, but I don't know, where do we go from there? You know, it's really hard to figure that out, you know, to bring people in that, unless they're getting an executive job or, you know, something like that. But it's very hard for a family to move into there and to get the housing and everything else. You know, it's tough. It's very tough. With that, I won't say any more. We'll be moving on to 7F, mandates and statutes pertaining to the county funding of the Marathon County Library. And I'm assuming Michael is taking care of this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a PowerPoint in your packet, so I'll pull that up, go through it. Since budget time is coming up, and one of the items in our annual budget is funding for the library, I was requested to give an overview on statutes and requirements related to our funding of our library system, so that's what this presentation will hopefully accomplish. Before I get into the details of what funding looks like, just a reminder of library governance and what the rules are regarding libraries themselves. Wisconsin Statute Chapter 43 governs libraries in the state. There are really 4 types of governance arrangements for public libraries. The first is municipal public libraries. That's your city, village, or town-driven public library. The second would be a joint public library, which is formed by a combination of municipalities, towns, cities, villages, etc. The third, which is what Marathon County currently has, is a consolidated county library system. That's where each library branch within the county is a branch of the main county's library. And the fourth is a tribal library governed by a tribal council. As I indicated, Marathon County, of course, operates a consolidated library system. Generally speaking, at a very high level, the public libraries in Marathon County is supported by county funds, state aid. There are some grant funds and gifts and donations as well. So generally, under Wisconsin law, counties are required to support libraries financially. The method of funding is dependent on the type of library system that we're talking about. So if you have a consolidated county library system, the county's requirements are different. If you have a set of municipal libraries within your county, you'll have a different requirement to fund those. In Marathon County, for instance, the county board decides on the amount of annual appropriation for library services. And in any county, we have to obviously be mindful of statutory requirements. Some statutes apply for some library types and some apply to other library types. Once funds are appropriated to libraries, the library board itself has exclusive authority over expending those funds. So I apologize for the small print, but For those counties that don't have consolidated systems, so this is not Marathon County, this is systems where the county's residents are served by municipal libraries or joint library systems, the county is still required in that case to reimburse those local and joint libraries within the county. They're also required to reimburse county library systems in adjacent counties. The amount has to be pursuant to a formula that's set forth in Wisconsin statute. Basically, it's 70% of the cost of the service that those libraries provide to county residents who don't live in those municipalities or in those other adjacent counties. And the language of the statutes is in that slide, but that's basically what it boils down to. At least 70% of those costs have to be covered by a county if the county does not operate a consolidated library system. And a county can, of course, choose to fund up to 100% of those costs if the county wants to do that. There is a provision in state law for a countywide tax for library services. Residents of municipalities within the county are only subject to the tax if their municipality doesn't have its own library tax. Marathon County obviously doesn't have a separate library tax because we have a consolidated library system. So our funding for the library comes out of the same funding that all other county departments come from. And when we're talking about our system, that's again that consolidated county library system. That's funded through the county's budget process. So all amounts that we appropriate to the library system then become exclusive control of the library. Previously, prior to 2011, there actually was a state law requirement that counties had to maintain funding for their libraries at an annual rate of not less than the average of the 3 prior years. That's no longer a part of Wisconsin state law. So there is no, it was called a maintenance of effort provision. That's no longer in state law. There are some requirements applicable. First of all, if a county is establishing a consolidated system, the county has to demonstrate to the state that it can provide adequate funding to fund the library's plan of service. And then to maintain eligibility for those state aid, which is part of what the library's budget is, a library system has to provide certain services. Those are listed on this slide. Some of them are obvious, like routing of reference and loan requests, training for library staff and trustees, support for library users with special needs, things like that. The state has to see that the consolidated library system is able to provide those services. So that's a brief and high-level overview of Wisconsin funding requirements. Obviously, they're different depending on what the system is. In Marathon County, we have a consolidated public library system within the county, so the county board funds that through the normal budget process, subject to those requirements to maintain state aid.
Lance?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 2 things to add on to really supplement what Mike just alluded to. As it relates to your library funding and the tax levy, I believe we covered this during the original orientation, but just as a quick reminder, your general county departments, all of your county departments that you fund through your annual budget process, it's helpful in my mind to think of them as under the operating levy limit, right? We talk about our levy limit, and it's the operating levy. Libraries are a little bit different in that they are funded, as Mike said, through the tax levy, but they're kind of, it's helpful to me to think of them similar to debt service. Remember when I talked about your tax levy in your orientation as being comprised of the operating levy, which is that levy line, and then you can put things above the levy limit line like debt service. Libraries go above the levy limit line. So if you wanted to spend $5 million to fund your libraries as opposed to the little in excess of $3 million, which you currently do, I think it's 3.5 about. You could do that and it wouldn't impact your operating levy. It would go above the levy limit line. It's similar to debt service. Just like if you borrow for North Central Healthcare, that doesn't necessarily come out of your operating levy limit. You can service debt with operating levy, but you can also service debt with debt levy. I don't know if anyone has any questions, you can ask me. It's a little bit complex, but that's the little nuance where they're a little bit different than another county department. They're still funded by tax levy, but they are one of the few areas in the levy limit, the levy statute, that they are outside of the operating levy. Another example, other than debt service, is if you wanted to fund an emergency, I've talked about emergency services, EMS. If you want to do a countywide EMS system, that too is outside of that operating levy limit. The only other thing I wanted to elaborate a little bit on, again, Mike is 100% right. If you don't have a consolidated library system, there's that floor of 70%, but you can go up to the 100%. And we actually just had this conversation. I have a number of colleagues that every week we get together and talk about what are we all facing, what are some innovative solutions to some of these challenges. And recently another county brought up libraries. They are required when they're not a consolidated library system to essentially have these conversations. What percentage are we going to be funding in county libraries, like Mike talked about, as well as out of county libraries to perform that rural circulation function? Because that's really what it is, right? You think about circulation within your municipal library. If you're running a municipal library, but you're serving people outside of your municipal boundary, that they refer to that as rural circulation. St. Croix County, for example, they fund at 100% those in-county municipal libraries and 100% for the outside the county libraries that Mike referred to in adjacent counties. Other counties, for example, Price County, 70% for both. But there's that 70% floor based on the formula, but you can go up to 100%, and counties, based on their individual plans, fund accordingly.
Thank you, Lance. Is there any questions for Michael or Lance? Supervisor Book.
Just a quick question. I'm curious to know why libraries have exclusive authority over expenditures of funds, and how and if the tax levy plays into this exclusive authority.
I guess the general answer is because the state law requires that library boards, once money is appropriated to them, that they have exclusive control over how those monies are spent. I guess one distinction I'll make, again, also between the types of library system. In a consolidated library system like in Marathon County, when you create a consolidated library system, you're also creating a library board that's staffed with a certain amount of library board trustees, which include a certain amount of county board supervisors. So while the county board itself doesn't have direct control over expenditures, the library board does. So there's still that oversight. But generally speaking, it's a creature of state law, like many things are in county government.
And just to elaborate on that again, like Mike said, the library board exists, and you approve of every appointment to the library board that is brought to you. So that is your nexus between control. And just to again elaborate on your question about how that implicates tax levy, I'll talk about one thing that I put in place in last year's budget to try to get at that idea of, while the statute gives the library board, once funds are allocated to it, it gives the library board complete discretion as to how to use those. I did, working with the library director, put in place a mechanism whereby through my annual budget building process, I wanted to mitigate the potential that, if the library doesn't spend the money, they keep getting it and can build a pot of funds. And I'm not saying that's what's happened, but historically that was a concern that was expressed by the board. In last year's budget, I expressly had a conversation with the library director and said, look, I'm going to look at what you spend your money on, and we're going to allow your reserve that you have to not grow beyond a certain amount, because quite honestly, I don't think that's the direction the board would want to go. I think we want to make sure we, just like every other department, the library does their best to be good stewards of the tax dollar. So that's one thing that I've put in place, and I assume that I haven't seen what their year-to-date expenditures are, but we're going to look at them and see, okay, are you on track for budget expenditures? What have you been spending money on? There are certain pieces of capital that I do think it's appropriate to have the library fund within their operating, within the budget we give them each year. And then there are other things that really shouldn't be the library board's responsibility or the library's responsibility relative to capital. The best example I can give is the library board roof. There was the significant issues with the library board roof over the last several years. That was several $100,000. It's not, no other department is asked to do that. If the roof needs to be replaced on the courthouse, it's not Corporation Counsel's office budget that I turn to do that. We have a capital budget that we use to do that. And that's the approach I'm taking moving forward. It's different than we've done it before. But I'm going to look at what their expenditures are and make sure that there's not that kind of growing reserve. We're going to manage that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Lance. Any other questions for Michael or Lance? Mr. Baker?
Thank you, Chair. I have several. So I'm a little unclear about the 70%. Are we still, is that 70% still apply to us because we're a consolidated library, or is?
It does not.
So there's statutorily, I'm not suggesting we do this, but statutorily there's no floor for our support level?
There is no statutory floor.
Then our basic influence over the library is budget. Also, the administrator is appointed by our administrator, the library administrator. That's an appointment by?
The library director is actually the sole employee of the library board, similar to your administrator being the county board's sole employee.
So the library director is hired by the board?
Yes.
So then Lance makes appointments for the library board? Is that correct? And we approve those? What's the term on those?
That's a good question.
And then the second, is there a method, is there any mechanism for removal of the library board? And what would that be?
There is a mechanism for removal. I don't have that, but I can get that to you and to the entire committee as well as the terms. Right. The removal would be similar to removal of other board and committee members, but I'll get you the exact statutory language.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Michael or Lance? Okay, thank you very much, Michael and Lance. Number 8, next meeting date or time, location, announcements, and agenda items. 8A, committee's members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. 8B, next scheduled meeting Thursday, October 6th, 2022 at 3 p.m. And number 9, I will take a motion. Motion by Supervisor Rosenberg, second by Supervisor Baker. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.